So what made us decide to do this seminar now? Because in a way you might think, well, it's the last thing anybody's thinking about is new business, but actually it isn't. The truth of the matter is we as a business are busy with 2 pitches live at the moment, and 2 more starting later this week. We also have a number of relationship management exercises that we're doing with a couple of our clients and agencies, and we have a number of other exercises that we're doing, which is really about agency ecosystems, evaluating the agencies that are within the client's portfolio, and to see if there are any gaps, etc. So we're doing a lot of that work too, which has been really interesting for the last couple of weeks, and there's more to come. And also really good, a new subscriber signed up today. So, you know, the business is going on, and the more we can do, I think, the better it is, as long as we don't put ourselves under terrible pressure. So when we sent out this invitation, it was all about, you know, upskilling and getting ready for post-lockdown, and let's use the time to get better at doing new business. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to also have taken a bit of a break, because I know that all the agencies are busy, and that everybody is anxiously trying to do the work to please the clients and to make sure that they're all serviced. So is there room for getting ready for new business? And I think there is, obviously, because it's good to have our prospect pipeline in place, and to be communicating. So let's make a start. And the first tip is make sure there's an annual plan. And if you have a plan, it's easy to adapt it when there's a crisis like this one. Has it been well constructed? Is it a real business plan? Does it have measurable goals? How are you going to measure whether you're successful or not? Do you have regular evaluation points? Do you have an up-to-date database, preferably your own? And I think really great agencies have compiled their databases over the years. They refresh them, they update them, and they communicate with their new business prospects on a regular basis, whether it's through newsletters or whatever. And then building your profiles. I think this is a good time to be talking about your agency and what you've been doing and some of the work you've been doing. And then, of course, make sure your sales kit is ready. So your credentials, presentations need to be fully up to date. And why not refresh that culture reel? Because your culture reel tells everybody all about who you are and how you are. And also, it's a nice way to get everybody involved again. So your teams who are all working remotely, it'll be great input for them to maybe talk about how they're doing, and maybe there's an opportunity to really make those credentials relevant to this time of COVID-19. In terms of adapting your plans in the short term, I was on a webinar the other day with one of my UK colleagues, and we had the CMO of Camelot. You know, they're the lottery people in the UK, and the head of strategy from Engine, which is an agency that used to be called WCRS in London. And they talked about 3 important attributes, which are empathy, entertainment, and comedy. And to try and build those into your credentials or culture reel at this time wouldn't be a bad idea, because I do think everybody needs support, and I think clients particularly need help. They have as many worries as agencies do, just different kinds of worries. My observation has been so far that you know, some marketing departments have already been cut back, certainly overseas. We'll know more about what's happening here as the weeks go by, but in our view, marketers are going to be even more dependent on their agencies than they were before. So yeah, so in terms of your planning, if you agency other than the CEO who is focused on new business, because it is what's needed, particularly at a time like this, and I think for the next forever, but certainly for the next few months. Okay, so moving on to tip number 2. Think about your message in your mail, and our points here: don't send out so many mails that you can't follow up. Avoid non-personalized mail, like, you know, dear X. But if you do send personalized mail, make sure the recipient's name is correct. Don't guess it, and get their title right. These things are so important. Try not to criticize your prospects' current advertising. Remember, at some point they would have approved it. And the other tip, of course, don't ambulance chase. One of the things we, and that's why you need to have a plan. It's too late when you hear that something is out to pitch for you, then that a brand is out to pitch for you, then to be contacting the client. They don't know you, they've never heard of you before. You actually just become a fair weather friend, somebody who's contacted them on an opportunistic basis. So, and that's ambulance chasing. Hearing about a pitch and then trying to get onto the pitch list, I'm afraid those days really are over, unless it's a very short-term plan. And that could well be the situation for this particular time, because there are marketers who are looking for solutions and for help during this COVID time, and maybe their agency hasn't had the capacity to be able to help them, or maybe they're so busy with their agency just keeping the work going that has to be done that they don't have, but they could do with extra resources. So there may be opportunities there. But what we're trying to do with these tips is to help you avoid a competitive pitch situation. Now, you might say, well, why would the IAS be trying to get us to avoid competitive pitches? Isn't that their business? Yes, it is our business, but competitive pitching is hard work for agencies and costly. So what we're hoping is that if you have a real robust new business plan in place, that you won't have to depend quite so much on the competitive RFPs, and you'll be able to pick and choose which business you go after, because not all prospects are worth going after, and we know that. So yeah, I think marketers at this time probably have no intention of changing their agencies if they can avoid it, because the last thing they want to do is have the disruption of a change of agency during a crisis like COVID-19. However, based on what I've been hearing on the various webinars I've been on in the last 3 weeks, marketers are open to new ideas, and they certainly are encouraging agencies to approach them if they have something that they think will be valuable and will be worthwhile for the brand. It won't mean that they change their agency, it won't mean that they go out to pitch, but it might mean that you get a short-term project, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think about your messages and think about what you want to communicate, and yeah, that should help you move forward a little bit more. Okay, this is an important one. Make an intelligent guess at the prospect's business problem. 9 times out of 10, I mean, agency people are smart people, so if you look at the industry that your prospect is in, now that you've identified which categories of prospects you're looking at, and obviously they have to be not in conflict with anything you have already, identify a possible problem relevant to that particular industry. It might be easier to do that at a time like this with the COVID situation. It might not be. Relate it back to something you may have read in the media about the company or its competitors. What clients want to know is that you have thought about them, and that you're not just trying to sell them your credentials and your solution, that you're actually thinking about them. That's what they want to know. Talk about that particular problem and your possible solution. Follow up with a conversation. And interestingly enough, in the last few weeks, we've been doing a lot of 30-minute chats with agencies and with marketers just to stay connected, because it is so important. And at a time like this, I think human beings, we're not seeing each other, physically, but we do want to see each other in a way so that we can feel something. And it's an opportunity, I think, now, particularly with all this wonderful technology that we haven't used and now we are using voraciously, to make connections with marketers that you may not have been able to make before. And why not? Why not? And I think you might find that marketers, although they're very busy and they are in back-to-back meetings, we know, because we talk to them, they might have time just for a 15-minute Microsoft Teams call or a 15-minute chat over WhatsApp, just to connect and just to listen to what you might have in mind about their particular industry. I always think it's easier to talk to a potential client about the industry that they're in as opposed to their particular brand, because I think that shows a much broader knowledge of a business and what its crisis points might be. And we do have an opportunity now with the COVID-19 situation to be able to explore those possibilities even more. Okay, so that was tip 3. Let's go on to tip 4. It should actually also say WeTransfers there. WeTransfers, DVDs, flash drives by mail don't work. They don't work. Prospects rarely look at them, and we know this also from our own experience. When we are talking to clients, when we're, let's say, at the credential stage of a pitch process, we are the ones who make sure that they look at all the things that are included, because obviously we've asked for them. Don't send unsolicited pieces to marketers. Half the time they can't open them because of their own security settings within their own company environments. So no matter what you've sent them, they won't be able to open it, and yeah, you've wasted time and money. And avoid expensive looking mailing pieces, particularly at the moment, because we shouldn't be spending our money on anything that looks as though it's superficial or unwarranted. We need to be, if we're going to do anything, let's talk about what money we're donating to food parcels or to other charities who are looking after the poor. I'd rather tell a client, I'd instead of me spending, I don't know, a couple of £1,000 on a fancy mailer, that I've donated it to Gift of the Givers to make sure that several children don't go hungry. So yeah, so that's something to think about. And then if you are going to send clients anything, make sure it's a reasonable size. We don't want to, marketers don't really have much storage space. They're working in quite confined environments. A lot of the time, they don't have those fancy offices that they used to have. So keeping large mailing pieces or keeping large boxes, it's quite difficult for them to do. And 9 times out of 10, you will find they've thrown them away. So again, be careful what you send. Don't send stuff that hasn't been asked for, because you really are actually creating a problem as opposed to giving them a solution. And as I say, I think at the moment, if we think about the environment for COVID-19, it would be better to be telling them what you're doing from a charitable point of view as opposed to just sending them something for the sake of sending them. If I'm stating things that are very obvious, then forgive me. But I think sometimes we know all these things, but we don't necessarily follow them. So I think it's important to just say those things on the way through. Okay, so I'm going to go to tip number 5, and then we're going to have a pause for questions because I can see some questions are coming through. This is an interesting one. Sometimes when I see agencies who have announced that to their existing clients that they've won new business I'm not sure that those existing clients are really that delighted. They like to see that you're doing well as an agency, they do, but they don't want to, their first worry is, oh gosh, are we really, how's that going to affect my service levels? Am I going to lose the person who's worked on my business for the last 2 or 3 years now that they've got a new client? So be aware that announcement mailings to clients and to prospects may not have the desired result. In terms of awards, yes, we know, and from agency scope, you also know that people who have presented those results too, although clients value creativity as one of the key ingredients for any agency selection, they equally will not necessarily admit or agree that awards are that important. So be careful when you are sending out information about awards, because they may not be really that interested. They might think that all you think about as an agency are awards. Of course, if these awards are effectiveness awards, that might be more interesting. If you can show a case study or you can show how that's worked. So there might be some interest there. And then any other internal changes, again, be careful about making announcements that are internally focused or not necessarily going to have an impact on the client's business, or even on the prospect for that matter. Okay, so there's a comment here before CEO repeat the point. I'm not sure what point that is, but I'll go back over it. That was from Debbie. I'll go back over it a little bit later. So this is actually also quite important, and this I learned this tip a long time ago when I was doing new business in the UK for an agency, and I saw how that was in those days, so it's a long time ago, but sometimes you can send out a copy of your, let's say you're sending out a case study about one of the campaigns you've done, but you've shrunk your campaign to fit a mailer. You're not going to do justice to that campaign, so, and the work that you've done. So it might be better just to not use big campaigns to fit a mailer. You might need to think slightly differently about how you would use a mailer. That's going to have more impact than just simply shrinking your great ad campaign. Keep your messages crisp, and this is quite an important message, and also to say that, you know, if there are things that you have been doing in the recent weeks that are new and specifically tailored to what's happening with COVID-19, use the opportunity to display those, because that's relevant. It is slightly tactical, but it might produce a short-term project for you. As I said before, not necessarily to change for the client to change the agency, but mainly to just give them another idea or something else they could be doing that they could do with you. I think in terms of what we were talking the other day to one of our colleagues who was saying that everybody is now online. So one of the things that's happened during this lockdown is that we're all online, like we are now. And as a result, everybody is on LinkedIn or everybody's on Twitter. And LinkedIn is pretty crowded at the moment. Be careful if you're going to be using LinkedIn. Prospects don't have time to absorb a lot of long content. Keep your messages short and to the point, and enable them to have a real, you know, just to get an idea. So maybe do a really good intro to a LinkedIn piece. Even one suggestion is to actually make it a live intro, and then the piece itself is an opinion piece that they can read and study at their leisure if they have the time. But we are in a time-poor world, and although there's probably a little bit more time than there was when we were all physically racing around from meeting to meeting in traffic, so we've now got a bit more time and we're a bit more focused. I think people are also starting to get fatigue at the amount of information that they are expected to absorb. And I also think that marketers, just like agencies, are struggling to just keep up with the work that they're doing. So, for example, today we heard from one of the clients, we're doing a relationship management exercise with 2 of the respondents. I mean, it's quite big teams that have to respond to a lot of questions. 2 of the respondents, they've been in lockdown for 3 weeks. 2 of the respondents only now actually had good enough connectivity to be able to respond to our survey. So things are not perfect out there. And this is a very, very large corporate client, but things are not perfect. I've had meetings with clients over WhatsApp. I've had meetings with clients over Microsoft Teams, and sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work well at all, and you're kind of talking into the dark. You know, it's confusing. So I think we have to be really careful about how we use this sort of connectivity at this time, and to be careful in terms of keeping our messages to the point, not waffling on too much, but nonetheless using the opportunity to make something relevant that the clients will, or the marketers will, respond to. Okay, well, we're racing through this at a pace, which is what I wanted to do. So please also think of questions. Do we have any? Oh no, I didn't miss one. Okay, there we go. So this is important too. I think a lot of the time, and you know, we've all been guilty about it, or of it. Find out more about the business and the people before you make contact with them. I was listening to a webinar a couple of days ago from marketing procurement. This was with Marketing Week in the UK, and one of the marketing procurement specialists was saying that, yeah, no, she knew the agency had done their homework about her because by chance they included it in their follow-up email to her. They didn't delete it. Luckily, it was all very complimentary. So yeah, I'm not sure how much homework you do about your prospects before you meet them, but the more you can find out about them, the better. And thank goodness we have the attributes of LinkedIn, which also helps us quite a bit. But I think if you can find out a bit more about them and get to know them, you'll have a better chance of response. So try and find out more about the business before you send a mailer. Start at the top. What we know is that if the CMO receives the communication, it will be passed down the line, whereas the lower levels within a marketing organization won't necessarily pass it up. And even if they did, we're not sure that it really is as influential as it could be. One of the reasons, for example, when we do our agency scope study, and that we are fairly prescriptive about who we talk to, is we want to talk to the people who can make decisions about their agencies, whether it's making decisions about budgets, whether it's making decisions about campaigns themselves, or whether it's making decisions about moving their business to a new agency. We are very selective about who we want to talk to, why we want to talk to them. And I think you need to be the same when it comes to talking to prospects. Aim at the top, because that is where those decisions are influenced greatly, and that's where things will pass down. You might get a connection through a lower level person who might just have joined. There's always an opportunity there, but in terms of influence factors, it needs to be something you need to be communicating at the most senior level. Test your pieces. So if you are sending something out, make sure it's understandable. And the way to do that is to test it among maybe some existing clients, or to test it among friends or colleagues, just so that you know that what you're trying to say is understandable. Sometimes we send out complex communication that people don't really understand. You think you've said something really clever or something really wise, but actually the recipient didn't really understand the point you were trying to make. So it's a dead duck. Test it before you send it. Okay. Tip 9. This is very important. Work out when to follow up. I think I've told this story a few times to people, but when I was doing new business a long time ago, one of the best times for me to get hold of prospects was on a Friday afternoon, certainly in London, because that's where they were. I'm not sure that that's the same here. Monday morning might be better in South Africa, it seems to me. But most agencies on a Monday morning are busy with status. Whether the new business director is going to be in a status meeting or not would be something else to think about, perhaps. But yeah, timing your phone calls, and remember this: marketers, they've told us they don't answer their phones. They will answer WhatsApps. They might, if they don't know who you are on their personal phones, they won't answer. Most of the time, they will respond to an email or a WhatsApp message, maybe, but be careful with those, because you might be invading people's private space. I'd be more inclined to send an email first, and to see. You're going to struggle with phone calls, because I just don't think people are too busy to actually pick them up, and even now I would say it's even more so. Very important, make friends with the gatekeepers. Those personal assistants who are still around when it comes to marketers are very important. Don't dismiss them. They are as important now as they were a few years ago, and can be the difference between you actually getting your message through, getting a mail through, getting an appointment. Those people are very important. Find out who they are. Receptionists are also very, very important in the marketing environment. They know everything that's going on, and they're very important people to take care of, and to be kind to, and to be nice to. It'll be interesting to see how, when we're all back physically in our offices, what changes in terms of how people are, well, you know, the role of receptionists and the role of personal assistants as well. I think it's going to be different, because those people have been, some of them, working remotely. So how that is all working will be, could be interesting. It's interesting now, and could be interesting in future. Leaving voice messages. Well, I don't know when you last left a voice message that was listened to, but most people don't even bother anymore, because 9 times out of 10, it's a very bad habit. But people might see that a person has called, they don't bother to listen to the message before they send them a WhatsApp back or a message back. So a voicemail doesn't seem to really work. And then, as I said before, don't make your mail pieces or your teasers so expensive and luxurious that they are received badly. They need to be low cost, entertaining, and with the right tone, particularly at the moment. Okay, and then tip number 10, I think, is never give up. And, you know, at a time like this, we certainly can't give up. There's a lot to do, there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of prospective work to do. I think that it takes time, and although you might have some luck at the moment with some short-term projects, the kind of prospects that you as an agency are going after, they take their time to make a decision about, first of all, even going out to pitch, and certainly they take their time in terms of changing agency. What we know from agency scope is that the average length of a relationship with a client in South Africa is 5 years, which means that we've got relationships that are sometimes 10 to 50 years long, and then other relationships that are maybe 6 months long. So in order to win a new business prospect, you're going to need to work at it for some months, and you'll know fairly soon whether that's going to turn into anything. Most good CMOs will stay in contact in some way or another with agencies, and if you've got something valuable to say, then they'll listen. The other thing that I've shown a few of you before is the results from the agency scope study, which shows that South African agencies are really good at making contact, but they're not good at converting those contacts into meetings with prospects. So you need to look at that. And the reason that I think that agencies are not getting in to see marketers as often as they would like is because you're spending a lot of time talking about yourselves as opposed to trying to solve an industry problem for them. Remember, if you've got an hour meeting or even a 30-minute meeting, spend 5 minutes talking about you and the rest of the time talking about them, and using the opportunity to engage and talk to them about something you might have observed. And it's going to take time. And we say on this slide here, some prospects take 2 years or more to convert, and smaller projects might lead to a pitch. I was looking at the agency scope results again this morning, and the 85%, I think it is, of all clients will, and we interviewed 224 marketers in the last study. 85% of them said that the reason they would move to a new agency, or the way in which they move to a new agency, is through a pitch process. You want to try and get in there through projects which might lead to something bigger, and will avoid the multiple agency competitive pitch. That's what you want to get to. So keep going and test, modify, adapt. That's, I think, the most important thing when it comes to new business. We've added in just this slide here into this presentation to talk about prospecting at the time of COVID-19. And over the last few weeks, as I say, I've listened to a number of webinars. In fact, I'm probably webinared out, although I'm still going to be attending a few this week. Marketers are relying even more on their agencies at this time. There's no question about it. Some marketing departments have already been shrunk to cope with costs, so I'm sure some of you are seeing that. Agencies probably have more short-term opportunities now than ever before. So don't be shy to come up with ideas, not necessarily creative ones only. They can be anything, any observation, any sensible comment that you might have about an industry that the client is in. And don't be put off if the first response that you get is negative. Remembering that marketers are unusually busy at this time. They might not have the time just to respond to you, but they might respond to you later. So it'll be worthwhile thinking about that. And then finally, if a prospect does call you, find out why before you jump into creating new work. Ask for a budget. Don't get so excited or desperate that you don't go through all of this process, because it does happen. I was hearing from an agency today, they've just moved a meeting with us on Friday because they've got a pitch happening on Friday. Pitches are happening. Prospects are being in contact with agencies for all the various reasons that I've talked about, and reasons of their own. Maybe, you know, we've heard about 1 or 2 agencies closing down in the last week or two. Those clients have to have a home somewhere. So you might find that the clients are looking around to find agencies, not necessarily coming through us, but ask the questions. Don't get so excited that you forget the basics. Are they using an intermediary? Of course we want we'd love it if all the pitches in this country were done through intermediaries like us, not necessarily only us, because we do a lot of work already, as you know, but where you get a clue about how serious the client is if they are prepared to spend some money with an intermediary, because we don't cost a lot of money. We're not hugely expensive for marketers. What it tells you, if they're coming through an intermediary like us or any of our competitors, is that they, as a client, are serious about wanting to change agency and serious about spending some money with that agency when they find them. So ask the question. Check into their history with agencies. Too many changes indicates an unhealthy restlessness. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure all of you can think of at least one client in certain sectors who have changed agencies just once too often. You've got to ask the question, why do they need to change so often? What are they not doing? What is not working? It can't just be the agency's fault. It's a two-way street. We're seeing it we see it with the relationship management exercises we do. It cannot be just about the agency falling short, although we know that one of the main reasons for clients to change agencies is because of poor service levels. That's what they say, that's what they've told us in agency scope, so we know for certain that that's true. But it might well be that there's another problem, and you need to find that out before you spend a lot of time and effort. Some of the agencies that we've worked with in pitches over the years, they may have come across that client before, and then they decide not to go into the pitch simply because they know the behaviour. Find out if you are in a pitch situation, is the incumbent pitching? And if they are, there's no reason for you to not ask the client, well, why? So is this an exercise in futility for you? I mean, are you just being called in because procurement says there needs to be some sort of review, or is it a genuine pitch? Ask the questions. 9 times out of 10, if it is a genuine pitch, it will be conducted properly through an intermediary. If it's not, then you need to ask the questions. And will there be pitch fee compensation? As we know, the rules have changed with the ACA because the rules were anti-competitive in that agencies who were members of the ACA weren't allowed to pitch if there wasn't pitch fee compensation. That came to an end a couple of years ago. So clients have kind of been let off the hook. We advocate pitch fee compensation. We believe that it's only right that if marketers want to see creative work, get some new ideas, they should be prepared to pay some sort of compensation fee to the unsuccessful agencies, knowing that the successful agency will gain income through implementing the successful the campaign if they win the business. So again, very important to ask that question. You're entitled to ask the question, and you're entitled to understand the reasons why and why not. And then always have a point of view. Even in your credentials, what we say to you all the time is, try not to sound the same as everybody else. You don't know what every other agency is saying. We do. You need to have a point of view as an agency, what you believe in, what your philosophy is, how you like to work, successful case studies that have worked, why they've worked, and what you've expected of clients in order to make those case studies work. Because I think part of the interesting thing about case studies is, and we ask agencies to do this, what did the client have to do in order to make that particular project work? I think it's good to share those things with prospective clients, because they then don't feel quite as intimidated when they hear these successful case studies. They need to know what they need to do in order to help you make your work best for them. Okay, and I think that's more or less me. One of the things that there is time for questions now. We've only had one question so far. I think you're all being very shy today, which is unusual. And I don't see any other questions coming up at the moment. I think what's important is to remember to not be desperate, no matter how tough things are. I think the great creativity and great strategic thinking will always win through. And what I wanted to also share with you, and the reason we've done this particular webinar for free to all agencies, so not just our subscribers, but all agencies. So I'm really happy to see some agencies who've signed up for this who are not currently our subscribers, so I'm hoping you will find out more about us later. This particular module, this session that I've just had with you now, is one of 6 sessions in our New Business for Ad Agencies program. And we've run the program a few times here, and it's a 6-week program, so it's 6 sessions, but it's a lot of time. So the way we had to do it before was early in the morning, so you'd start at like 7:15 and finish at 8:45, so you could get into your offices by 9 o'clock. What we've decided to do is put it online. So I've actually had a very good conversation already with the Red and Yellow School, and we're going to be partnering with them to put the whole course together as an online new business course. And I think that'll be available later in the year, and we'll be able to tell you more about it then. It seems like a good program. It's worked. It's one that I've put together working with my international colleagues in London a few years ago, and it's so this module was a taste of what that course is going to be like. Okay, so that's me, done. And I must just share with you, I was really nervous about all of this morning, thinking about how am I going to make sure that you all spend 45 minutes with us that's very valuable time for you, and that you get something out of this. So I hope that each of you has got something, 1 or 2 tips out of what we said today. There was a question about something on slide 2, so I'm just going to go back to that, or tip 2. I think it was about maybe, I don't know, something about the CEO, but I don't recall what it was. But anyway, I'll just quickly go through the 10 tips again so that you can make a few notes. You can't have this content, but I am writing it, and I've written it, in fact, and it'll be in the Mark Lives column in a few weeks' time that I have with them. Okay, so thank you very much for sharing the time and spending time with us, and we'll see you again in a few weeks. As I say, the next masterclass for IAS subscribing agencies is on the 12th of May, and it's all about the POPI Act, which is now coming into being. Thanks very much, and goodbye.